ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to Citizen Day, where we wreck the week's current affairs with the best political team on television from a very Auckland perspective. Warning, we're as fair and balanced as Fox News. Joining me tonight on my revolving panel of bloggers and Auckland opinion shapers, he is the last angry blogger and was voted as having the most sensible haircut on television. Editor of the mighty Tūmiki blog, multinationalist and reformed libertarian, whatever that means. He doesn't so much rage against the machine as decolonise against the machine, Mr. Timothy Selwyn, and she is the most powerful female politician in the country. Her hobbies include environmentalism, Westies,ism and fighting evil. The Deputy Mayor of the Auckland Super City and high-ranking Jedi Knight, Penny Haltz, welcome to you both. Coming up tonight, issue 1, it's the economy, stupid. Standard & Poor's shock everyone by putting the New Zealand credit rating on negative watch. Is it time to accept the double dip recession is coming? Issue 2, it's Benny Bash season. The ideologically stacked welfare raiser gang have released their hard-right economic policy and social policy wish list, sending solo mothers, the mentally unwell, the crippled and the sick back to work in a high unemployment environment. Never sounded like so much fun. Issue 3 tonight, Auckland Super City-O-Rama, council-controlled organisations pretend to care about democracy. The Aurora Hotel gets dumped faster than Paul Henry, and Len Brown pushes to bypass opposition to building a private prison in Wirri. Why is Len channeling John Banks? And we'll end the show on a final word. But let's kick things off with issue 1. While the Pike River mining tragedy dominated the news media this week, and our thoughts go out to the West Coast whānau, other political stories went under the news radar. One of them was the shock credit rating negative watch by Standard & Poor's. So Bill English and John Key visited Standard & Poor's 2 weeks ago. Doesn't sound like
was that the mistake?
Were very convincing, does it? English claims that S&P reacted because of our debt level, but New Zealand's debt level is much lower than the rest of the world, and S&P was specific about us being vulnerable to external shocks. How strong is the economy, and when should New Zealanders start hoarding?
Well, are we going the way of Ireland is probably what the international people would be looking at.
Celtic tiger, burning bright. Very bright right now.
As it sinks into the ocean,
right,
never to be seen again. But I mean, we're still at, I think, AA+ or something as far as they're concerned. And our fundamentals are okay. As you say, we've got low debt now, and a lot of that has to do with Michael Cullen.
That's right. Thank you, Mr. Cullen.
Doing some good work there, at least, and so we're in a position where if we have to borrow, and we are borrowing a lot at the moment, we can, and we will continue to.
We will. These external shocks they were talking about, though, what are they? We're talking about a currency war?
Well, we're talking about if something moves, then yeah, we are vulnerable because we are a floating currency. We are there and we're very much dependent on international markets, Australia, China especially, and that does make us vulnerable, because we're not like in the EU or something and we can trade in that situation or have a backup currency to use like that, like they have. So we are a bit weak, but so are other people as well.
Right.
And so, I mean, maybe expect some downgrades for some other people.
Do S&P know something we don't?
All they're doing is looking at the big picture and they see, well, we are weak, we are vulnerable, but we are not as weak and vulnerable as we used to be, or in fact as some other countries are.
Penny, how does implementing free market deregulation, low tax dogma domestically counter a global crisis caused by free market deregulation, low tax dogma?
I was just listening as I was coming in here to the Ireland experience where money was just sort of poured into things like building beautiful houses, buying, huge televisions. The worry is that if you pour money into concrete things like beautiful mansions, when things change, people can't afford to live in them, and apparently they're now bulldozing huge tracts of expensive and magnificent housing. The real issue for us here is that we need to create a more resilient economy, and that means investing in our community and in things that will actually allow our community to ride out these sort of ebbs and flows and dips. And the concern that I have is that the first thing that happens is everyone wants to chop social spending, and that's the completely opposite thing that needs to happen.
Tim, if New Zealanders hurt financially, and over half say this week in a poll that they are worse off after the GST tax cuts, why did National do so well in Mana?
Well, GST increase,
the GST,
plus a little bit of tax cuts that probably won't equal that.
That doesn't equal it, that's right. And most people say they don't feel better, yet National did quite well in Mana.
Well, that was a surprising result, I think. Although, I wasn't in Wellington, I wasn't monitoring it closely.
But who wants to monitor anything closely from Wellington, right? I understand what you're saying.
But Chris Farfoy, I mean, he was Phil's mate. He is Phil's mate, and
Dreadful candidate though, wasn't he?
well, he was appointed
Wasn't he awful?
rather than
Didn't earn it.
selected as such.
Yeah.
And that was the problem. And you get places, Porirua, I suppose, and other places that they're quite, I suppose they're parochial, as many places are. And I think the sense I get from talking to people who were looking at it was that there was a bit of resentment
Right.
that head office made an appointment.
Right.
It was this young guy, there was a resentment that they have to tick certain boxes,
Yeah.
Pacific Island, young,
Yep.
they tick all the boxes and then they select, or should I say, appoint a candidate, and I think there was a bit of resentment. And then on top of that, we got Hekia Parata, who is
Very good.
who is quite a performer.
Yes.
And she knows her stuff, and she's quite solid. And
Yep.
of course, you had that big backing from John Key on high, so
Yep.
she got a bit of mana there, as it were, and she was able to staggeringly chop right into what should have been quite a large Labor majority. I mean,
National
almost
read too
within
much into it?
1,000. It was amazing.
Could National read too much into that one?
I'm sure they will. Read far too
I
much
think they
into it.
already have.
Yeah, they have. But Chris Farfoy was an awful candidate. God, he was his getting beaten up on the interview, the TV interview. His ridiculous super infant memory, and then on the Nation when he was being challenged about why it was that he wasn't doing so well because he had all this broadcasting experience. His simpering answer was, "Oh, it's easier to ask the questions than answer them." And you're thinking, well, mate, maybe you shouldn't be the one trying to answer them. Penny, the government sell this credit watch downgrade as a reason why we need to cut back on borrowing for public services. When desperate people need those social services most, is that justified?
No, I guess it follows on from what I was saying before. If ever we've needed to make sure that we are training our young people, that we're investing in universities, that we're investing in trade skills, that we're investing in things that grow our community, now's the time to do that. And the bit that worries me, thinking back to, I can't remember what it was, maybe early 90s, when we had that huge conference here around cutting, slashing, sending people back to work, and we all protested outside. We've come full circle, and that's where we're heading now, and completely missing the point that if we invest in our families and our young people, we're actually going to grow a more robust economy in the long term.
Question to both of you. Is the economy going to escape a double-dip recession? Global economic indicators are suggesting a bleak first half of 2011. Double dip, on or off?
Yeah, well, it depends how the sales are for Christmas, I suppose.
Yep.
It depends what the consumer demand is, and everyone's just paying off debt. That's basically what it comes down to, and the Americans are in a lot of trouble. And even though China is rising and so is India and so forth, America is still very important to the world economy.
So if America goes down, those other two...
Well, they're already on the slide.
Yep.
They keep on saying the odd economic indicator here and there is positive, but they're looking for bits of gold in a very, very large toxic
Avalanche of
waste
shit, aren't they?
dump.
Yeah.
Yes.
Double dip recession, we on or off?
I think we took ourselves into it
Really?
sometimes.
Yeah.
I think, it's really interesting in my huge encyclopedic knowledge of economics, which I could write on a small matchbox, but it does seem to me that we talk ourselves into the negativity. And I think Tim's point about if people react perhaps by not buying as much, it will have an impact immediately, but perhaps the longer term impact is that it might allow people to be a wee bit more resilient if things do hit the fan further on.
Yeah, that's the trouble, isn't it? Because people plan that there is going to be no growth and that there is going to be some sort of cutback, and then, it is a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Well, the best case scenario at the moment is a decade of high unemployment and incredibly low growth. That's what has been put up by Bill English as the best case scenario for the next decade. Well, you're going, that's not bad.
Yeah, well, how long can China sustain massive increase in growth?
Not that long. Tim, who wins and who loses by the S&P negative watch downgrade?
Well,
Bonus for the government?
Well, I suppose it's the New Zealand credit rating affects our exchange rate, it affects our borrowing and interest rates and so forth, but it is marginal. So hopefully it won't have too much damage, and we have escaped anything of the magnitude of Ireland.
Right.
Thank heavens.
Penny, who wins and who loses by the S&P negative watch downgrade?
I think the people who want to promote cost cutting in the social sector win, and the community would lose by that.
Thank you, panel. Issue 2. It's bash the dirty, filthy Benny time. The ideologically stacked welfare raiser gang have submitted their wish list to force those on welfare back to work by using voodoo math to justify the harshest cutbacks since Ruth Richardson. How does using the stick work when there are no jobs?